Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brady, and for this week's discussion, I have Stanley Illman. Now, Stanley is a long-time overland traveler, but he's also a race driver for off-road racing, including winning the Roof of Africa, and he's also traveled around the world in various vintage car rallies. So these are some really fun conversations with Stanley about traveling around the world in both vintage cars and in overland vehicles. Stanley has a love for the Gwagon, so we talk about that vehicle and we talk about some of the other platforms that he's built throughout the years, including the Entdecker Gwagon and his time owning Unicat too. So this is a really great conversation around overland vehicles, but it's a fun conversation around travel in Africa, because Stanley's been traveling in Africa for the last 60 plus years, and he has some great stories to tell. So really interesting conversation with Stanley Illman.
This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com.
Well, Stanley, thank you so much for spending time with me this morning. You are one of the legends of our industry. You helped to create so many of the unique vehicles and products that we all enjoy today, and it's going to be fun to hear not only where you've traveled around the world, but what led you to a lot of those decisions that resulted in the creation of those products. But what I'd love to start with is the story of how you somehow survived rolling a Porsche on a rally into a drainage ditch and are still with us today, because that's an incredible story.
Yeah, well, that happened on London-Sydney, and we were rallying through Malaysia. And we were in a banana plantation for a stage, and Franz was driving, not me, thank God. And we lost control and went into a ditch upside down full of water.
Wow.
And the car was submerged. We couldn't get out the back because of the roll cage. The two walls on the side of the vehicle, we couldn't get out the windows, and the front was buried in the mud. So the best we could do was to gasp for a little bit of air on the top, which you had to take off your helmet. We struggled around a bit, we got to the top, and from my diving experiences in the early years as a North Sea diver when I was young, you blow bubbles to see where up and down is, because it's pitch black.
Oh, sure.
Okay, and managed to find some air at the top, and we sat there for 45-50 minutes waiting for someone to come and rescue us. So luckily a Ford Falcon crashed behind us and in the same corner, and
Wow.
but didn't land on top of us, otherwise we would have been finished.
Yeah, sure.
But he landed behind us, and they could get out because they weren't completely flat. They weren't submerged in anything. They could climb out, and they saw us there, and they signaled for the next guy that came through to report it back to control, and then they came with a crane and hoisted us and the vehicle out.
And if I remember, you got the car running again, and you completed the journey.
No. We didn't.
Not that one?
That one was my final. That's when Front and I said, I think we're old enough to get out of this game now.
Well, you still can.
Well, we still can.
Yeah.
And that was a big fright for both of us, and it was a close call. And after that, we actually stopped racing.
Yeah.
As you know, but we still carry on in the 4x4.
Yes, you
the
do.
team carries on forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as we can.
Well, let's go back to the beginning.
Where were you born, and what kind of started your love for the outdoors?
I was born here in Johannesburg, South Africa, and my father was a pharmacist, and my grandparents had a small holding north of Johannesburg with their little farm that they had chickens and some cattle, and it was a hobby for my grandfather. And I started my life with the outdoor, being with them a lot because my parents were always working in a pharmacy.
Sure.
And I spent a lot of time with my grandparents as a youngster.
Yeah.
And I learned from that, basically.
And then you spent quite a bit of time riding horses early in life too.
I used to ride horses. I enjoyed that very much. I did a little bit of show jumping.
Yeah.
That interested me. Then I moved to motorcycles.
Yes.
I started very early in motorcycles at 16. I was on a small Garelli. That's what we were allowed to ride then, or an item. Those 2 Italian little mopeds. And we started on those. We used to travel all over the country with them.
Amazing.
And going long distances like 300-400 kilometers on a 50cc. and bicycles, of course, when we were younger.
Sure.
And it was an open way of life in South Africa, and you could travel everywhere, and it was very safe.
Well, and it's interesting because you've covered so many different means of travel throughout your time, and so many different kinds of vehicles. One of the stories that I remember hearing was you buying a Unimog, and talk about why did you purchase a Unimog, and where did you drive it to?
Well, that all started as something different.
Yeah.
Okay? We'd done all the 4x4 stuff. We traveled through Africa. We had gone all the way up to Ethiopia, all the way around, and for many years I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of kilometers I've done off-road. I decided one day, I think a Unimog is a good idea. It's the ultimate 4x4 vehicle.
Yeah.
I bought a Unimog in Germany, had it moved to right-hand drive, imported it into South Africa, put a canvas back on the back of it, just with a small load bed, and it was a 4-seater, the double 4-door front. The 2 Frances and myself went for a test drive to Ethiopia, and there was 2 rooftop tents on the top. And then when it came back, I then shipped it to Germany because I wanted to build a proper camper van out of it, and went to Unicat, and they helped me build that whole vehicle and brought it back here. And then the late Paul Allen bought that Unimog from me.
Yeah, I remember that story. Yeah. And that was actually the first Unimog I had ever driven was yours.
Right.
And this was in 2010 here in South Africa when we went up to your game farm. That was
Right.
the first time I had ever driven
A Unimog.
a Unimog, and it was incredible. And the camper that you had on there was very unique in the fact that you had, if I recall correctly, the whole back of it dropped down and became like an observation platform.
It was a sleeping platform, actually.
Yeah.
So we could sleep out there. It was a great vehicle. It was really great fun. I've traveled quite a bit with it. After that, we crossed into, when it was finished in Unicat, we went and crossed the Sahara.
I remember that. You went over the Atlas Mountains and everything.
Yeah, I went all the way across, and we went to Tunisia and through to Libya and all the way down to Sudan.
Yeah. What did you enjoy about that trip? What was unique?
The desert is magical. I'm still a great lover of deserts.
Yeah.
I'm not great on jungles because I don't think you have the depth of field. There's too many trees. It's very close up.
Yeah.
But the desert with those open spaces, for me, I can drive there all day.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's something, I think, peaceful and
mystical.
Yes, all of that about the desert, and it you feel like you're a part of the place.
Correct.
Yeah. Whereas you're right, in the jungle, it's kind of you're surviving the jungle.
You're not only, you don't have it any distance. You
Yeah.
know, it's close up and it's damp and it's
Yeah.
not quite my style. I've been,
Yeah.
but that's about it.
Well, we spent quite a bit of time. So Stanley and I, we did a trip with some friends, Brian Bass, who many of you on the podcast have heard. We went to Kenya, and we flew into Kenya, and we picked up the Gwagon. Let's talk a little bit about those cars, because I think it's interesting before we talk about the trip. But you had purchased 10 specialty spec.
There were 9 of them, actually.
Okay.
We couldn't get 10. The Swiss Alex, through Alex in Switzerland, we managed to buy what they called the Green Line, which was a military-style vehicle and used for military purposes, and we could actually spec the vehicle the way we wanted it. And we bought 9 vehicles. Of those, 7 were converted into Endeckers. We took them down to Unicat again, and they converted 7 of them into Endeckers, and we had a group of guys that everybody wanted one.
Yeah.
And I kept 2, and the rest was sold off, and Alex kept 1, and a friend of mine, Richard Schilling, he kept another one, and we had some great trips in those vehicles all over Africa.
Incredible vehicles. And if I remember, somewhere along the way, you purchased some or all of Unicat to finish the project. Is that true?
Unicat had a little bit of a problem at one stage, and we actually bought into it, but then we sold out. And there was a great guy there, Voss, who owns it still today.
Yeah.
Okay, he was a big IT guy. He had lots of bucks. I didn't have that kind of bucks to support Unicat, but when we finished our stuff, we got out and he stayed in. And we're still great friends, all of us. Thomas Rutter at Unicat, and Voss and myself, and Bernie, all great friends.
That was a very ambitious project, and for many of us who've been around the overland space for a long time, the Entdeckers were kind of this mystical vehicle because they were so rare, and there was so much thought that went into them, like a degree of finish that you'd never see in a typical wagon. The way because how many liters of fuel did you have on board, if I remember?
We had close to 220, 230 liters, somewhere around there. We had 125 liters of water. Everything stored very low down, so we had a very good center of gravity. We designed all the inside. All was done here at Front Runner.
Yeah.
Okay, we designed all the vehicles here, and then we had them built by Unicat in Germany because they were Swiss registered vehicles. We couldn't bring them into South Africa because the left-hand drive was not allowed, and we could only buy it in left-hand drive. I tried to buy some right-hand drive, but they wouldn't give it to us.
And you even had 2 fridges, if I remember.
2 National Lunar fridges we had at the time, and in each vehicle, 1 deep freeze, 1 fridge, 40 liters each, and we had rooftop tent from Julina at that stage, and that was the vehicle.
Yeah, and they really worked. They really functioned well. So when we flew into Kenya, I remember we went to this remote runway, and this was another hilarious story. It's amazing, these stories that come up in my travels with you. But we're flying on a Cessna Caravan, and we land in this remote runway in Kenya, and it turns out that the plane we were flying on you used to own.
Actually, what happened was on the way up, I sold the plane. I had a Cessna Caravan for a while. I sold it. I never knew who the owner was. All I knew, the money arrived in the bank, and it went up to Kenya. That I didn't know, but where or how or why for. And I remembered there was some guy up there in Kenya that bought it. And when we were taking the Unimog on its first trip up to Ethiopia at Nanyuki, we passed this runway, the Nanyuki runway, and I saw my plane because it had an elephant called Shamu, one of the big great elephants of the Kruger Park, on the tail. Okay, a picture of it in green and gold. And I said, hey, hang on, let's go in there. I want to see where this plane is. So I walked in and I saw, and I asked the question, where's the owner of the plane? They said, no, he's in the hangar there fixing some engine on an aircraft. So I went in and I met, and I said, hi, are you the owner? He said, yes. I said, I'm Stanley Illman from South Africa. Oh, that's your plane that I bought. And that was Jamie Roberts.
What a nice guy.
And since then, we've been friends for many, many years going forward, and we left our cars there. He came down here. We see each other often. He runs a thing called Tropic Air.
And he runs flights back and forth from Nairobi to get people.
He does a lot of helicopter work up north there. And he runs a charter business as well.
Amazing.
At the same time.
Yeah, what a nice guy he was.
Right.
And he helped us with some of our route planning. And
right. The Roberts family is a great family in northern Kenya.
Yeah, it was very fun to meet them, and again, just how crazy that story is. That's where your plane was, and then we left from there, and we drove across Kenya and into Uganda, which was just magic. Was that your first time to Uganda?
No, it was second time to Uganda. Not going as far north as we did to Kapita.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was the first time I'd been that far north, but
Yeah.
I'd been in earlier. I've been into the bottom end of Uganda. But
Yeah, and we had an amazing time in Kidepo at the game reserve
Sure.
up in the north, where we were. It was so rare to be able to go into a game park and just wild camp, where there was no fences.
nothing.
I mean, it was just us out in the bush.
That's it. Yeah.
You know, and that was so interesting. We had that really sweet guy with us, one of the park rangers, and he had an AK-47.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him, I said, "When's the last time you shot that gun?" And he says, "Well, when they gave it to me 10 years ago." You know, so, and he was the one that was gonna protect us.
Yeah, we were close to the Sudanese border.
That's right. In fact, we ended up going into South Sudan.
Yeah, the road only led into there for a little while.
That's
and we
right.
drove through.
That's right. We got to go into the desert a little bit, which was fun. And we saw those, they were clearly, bringing things illegally across the
Sure.
border. Yeah, that was really interesting. I mean, and given where I'm at with my trip right now, I sure wish I could still get into Sudan. It's not possible at the
Right,
moment.
at this moment, it looks like real civil war breaking
Yeah,
out
that's
there
right.
at the moment.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a great shame.
Yeah, it is a
It's
shame.
also a great country.
Yeah, beautiful country. When you look back on the vehicles that you've built, talk about the things around the Entdecker or any of the other vehicles. What are some of the core elements that you try to look at when you prepare a vehicle for overland travel?
Carry as little as possible, as light as possible. You do need the range if you're going to cross long distances. I mean, I think we had a range of just on 1,800 kilometers in
Yeah.
a vehicle in the desert. I think for one trip we did through Algeria that we crossed, there was a stretch of 1,200. We didn't quite make it. We had to take 4 vehicles, and we had to take. We sent one forward, took the fuel out of the others to send the one to go and fetch fuel to bring back for us to get to the next
Sure.
town. Okay.
So how close did you get? Within 30, 40 kilometers?
No, about 150.
Oh.
The desert is hard going.
It
It's very
is.
hard to judge how
And
much
those
fuel
are
you're going to use.
And those are heavy cars.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you find that keeping the vehicle simple, light. You've always really liked the Gwagon. What about the Gwagon do you find that you like the most?
It's a very robust vehicle. It's hard to break. The modern ones, like the Entdecker, too much electronics, unfortunately, not much you can do about it. But you had to learn how to reset and what to do, and we had the Mercedes units to actually find the faults
I
and
remember that,
try
yeah.
and fix and do. But they've never let us down. We've always driven them home. Doesn't matter what happened, we've driven them home.
Well, I remember.
And I've never been stuck, actually. I'm very lucky, touch wood, that I've never had to tow a vehicle home. I've
Amazing.
always managed to drive home wherever I've been.
Well, and even when we were on that trip in Kenya and Uganda, I think we lost the 12-volt alternator on
Alex's
car. Yeah. And then we had to run cables out through the window and
Yeah, to get 12 volts back into the ECU.
and the
Yeah.
batteries were boiling.
Boiling and everything.
You
We
made
got it home.
You
Yeah,
did.
we made it, got it back.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And one of my favorite stories, and I actually love it when your wife Gilly tells the story, but it was when I think you were either first married or
Just
very
before
early,
we were married, actually.
and you drove to Maun from Johannesburg, and how many days were you driving in the water?
Well, we drove from Johannesburg up to Kasane,
Okay.
and then in December, and the Mbabe Depression was fully underwater. Never been up there before. No GPSs or anything like that in
Yeah.
those days. No radio communication, nothing. Just a Land Rover, 110, and we drove up there in the late 60s. Got to Kasane, and I said, well, the compass says there's the direction. to Mount. And I had an aeronautical map with a whole lot of little numbers on. Didn't quite understand it properly. I thought, oh, there must be villages or something. They don't put the names there, just put a number. Anyway, we drove and we drove and we drove out of Kasane. We were in the water for 5 days, lost driving around on hunting tracks that you can see in the water.
Sure.
And eventually found a beacon underwater and took a jar so I could see what the number was on the beacon, and went under and had a look at the number, and then found it on the map, and then took a compass heading, took a sextant reading in the evening, and found my way down to Mount.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I love hearing stories like that, and the ones recently that I had with Tom Shepard out of the UK. Before GPS and before satellite communication and all of that, I mean, it was such another level of adventure.
Yeah, I mean, if you missed Mount by 2 or 3 kilometers each side, you were back in the pants.
Yeah.
So that was it. And the only place there was fuel was Mount.
Yeah.
In those days. And Mount consisted of Riley's garage, which was a hotel as well, the Riley Hotel. There we got fuel. And there must have been, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 huts in Mount in the 60s, late 60s.
Amazing. And now it's quite a thriving little...
That's unbelievable what's happened there. Tar runways, big jets come flying in.
They do. Well, it's such an incredible part of the world. I mean, it seems to me a lot like the Garden of Eden. I mean,
to me, it is the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
The Okavango Swamps is the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
There's some photographs I've taken in the setting sun when the giraffe are drinking and the hippo are, it's just unbelievable.
We camped so much there while camping in the
Yeah.
early years. We used to just go and camp and go drive around in all the parks there.
Yeah.
It was very open in those days. Today they've closed it off a lot. Control, and there's a lot of tourists there and stuff. But in the early years there was no one.
In all of your travels, if I remember, you've done the length of the Americas in rally vehicles. You did a trip from all the way up to Alaska in a rally vehicle too?
Yes, we did London to Mexico was one trip. And then we did Panama, Alaska, from Panama all the way through on the rally cars. We did London, Sydney.
And London, Singapore you did at one point too, didn't you?
No, London, Sydney, that was the second one when we crashed.
Yeah.
That was the last one. We did one before that, all in classic cars, the old Porsches.
Yeah, sure.
France is a genius at the old Porsches, and we had a lot of fun.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you and I just went the other day, and we got to go to a Porsche club here in South Africa and take a look at those vehicles, and I could see that they still bring a sparkle to your eye.
Oh, yes, the old 911s.
So fantastic.
And the old 356s in the early years.
Yeah, so fantastic. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because I think it helps those that are listening, is you've also designed a lot of products for your own travels. You built them for your own needs.
That's how it started.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you learned through that process? Talk about some of the basics of those products that you felt really made a difference.
Yeah, well, it started off was in the first Gwagon that I had. The Land Rover, it was a 110, there were only two of us traveling, we never had a roof rack or anything. Managed to fit everything inside. There was no rooftop tents either in those days. We used to sleep inside the back of the vehicle up in the north, otherwise camp on the ground. And but the thing was, then the first Geländewagen came out, the Bortes was a short wheelbase, 300D, no power.
Yeah, sure, very slow car.
Very slow on power. Anyway, that was the vehicle, and we had a roof rack from Germany on it, from the factory. And the first big bump, a dip in a riverbed, the roof rack landed on the bonnet. And that was my first starts to get it going.
To build a proper roof rack.
To build a proper roof rack. And actually that's where I found Frontrunner, which was a very small company that belonged to Safari Center in South Africa. There was a guy, Adolf, here that was making roof racks, welded aluminium roof racks. I came to him and I said, well, can you build me a roof rack? I want it like this and like that and like that. And he said, fine. And he built me the roof rack. And then while we were busy, he said, well, the company's got problems and I need money. So I bought the company. I just retired out of the public company that I was involved in. And I was 52 at the stage. I bought Frontrunner in 2000, actual
Yeah.
company itself. Made a couple of welded together roof racks. So I bought that, took the company over, all the assets, took two of my ex-employees from the Voltex group that didn't want to work there anymore and wanted to join me, and we started Frontrunner. And slowly but surely we built all the product line based around the roof rack to start with, because it seemed to be becoming quite popular at the time.
Sure.
And then we developed the Slimline 2, which was a non-welded roof rack that you could pack smaller for the American market.
Yeah.
And we had a big learning lesson how to pack and what to do
Sure.
to market in the United States.
Yeah.
How the online business starts to work with
Sure.
Tina and Dave and Renee, all of us together,
Yeah.
my two daughters and my son-in-law. And we managed to get it all going at the end of the day.
You did. It's been a product that people now recognize and people go out of their way to purchase because it does a good job.
I think it does a good job. It's a very strong rack. The members, the slats as we call them, run from east to west on the vehicle. Most other roof racks run north to south. I see other competitors now copying us. Okay,
Yeah.
everybody before that said it wouldn't work, but it does work, and it makes a much stronger rack than most racks.
Well, and the one thing that I like about it is that it can be configured. So it's possible to, like if you have a sunroof, you can remove those slats
Correct.
directly over the sunroof so you can stand up inside the vehicle if you're in a game park or whatever. There's options to
It's very flexible
Yeah.
in the way it's done. Frontrunner's just launched a van rack now that's fully configurable, so you can move the slats independently to have all the hatches and the air conditioning on top of the roof at the same time.
Sure. That
So we've
makes
just
sense.
launched that, so I think that's going to be a great success.
Well, yeah, they have been. I mean, you can definitely see how popular the Frontrunner racks are around the world. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, when you travel and you go on a ferry going across to Africa from Europe, just look across the top, you see
Yeah.
hundreds of racks of
You do.
Frontrunner.
You do. You really, really do. You also have a love for motorcycles, and you've done some great trips on motorcycles too. What's your favorite bike that you like to ride?
At the moment, it's a GS, it's 1250. I always try and keep up to date with that. But I started on, as I said, the Gorillas, and then
Yeah.
moved to the Husqvarnas, the Micos, the Scrambler type
Sure.
enduro bikes, Africa Twins. I had all of them on the way. Okay. In the early years, I had a Triumph and I had an Autumn.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you even told me that you had a Black Shadow, right?
Yeah, I had it one stage. Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, these are motorcycles.
Well,
that
if I
today-
kept everything and
I
never
know.
sold it, I would have had a lot of value in the product that I had.
Unbelievable. I mean, that old Norton would have been incredible, but
It's
to have
awesome.
have a Black Shadow,
No,
unbelievable.
it's another story.
That's just such a rare
No, there was
motorcycle.
a Black Shadow, there was an Ariel Square 4, there were all those old bikes. There was a thing called a Munch with an NSU motor. Yeah, we went through all those bikes together. I had some good bike friends here in South Africa. We
Yeah.
used to ride a lot. When we were younger, we used to ride to Durban in the middle of the night. How we did it, I don't know. But with hardly a headlamp, it was like a candle in front. But there was no traffic, and
Yeah.
we used to go 5 hours to Durban. I mean, flat
Unbelievable.
out all the way. No goggles, no helmet, T-shirt, jeans. That was it.
Unbelievable.
Trying to be Steve McQueen.
Yeah, I think
The coolest guy
I
around.
think a lot of us have wanted to be Steve McQueen
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Wow. You've seen a lot of growth in the overland industry. You've seen it explode in the last 20 years since you started your ownership of Frontrunner. What is some advice that you can give to young travelers, new travelers in the overland space that are looking for advice from someone who's been around the world like you have? What are some pieces of advice that you would give them if you were sitting down with them?
The most important advice is go around the mountain, not over the mountain. Okay, if you can. Look after your vehicle, right? Keep it as light as possible. Whatever you do, don't use on one trip, leave behind.
Yeah.
Don't take it on the next trip. There's a lot of good vehicles around. You can make some nice builds depending where you're going and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Drive carefully. The off-road is if you have an accident and you're on your own, You can be in the middle of nowhere, there's nobody to rescue or anything, so you have to keep that in mind in a big way. Today, a little better. You can have a little spot meter that you can send some signals out, or a Garmin, or or a satellite phone. So it's not as bad as it used to be.
Sure.
But those are the things we do.
That's what I noticed when I traveled with you guys. Is you're all really excellent drivers. It doesn't mean that you drive slow, because you don't drive slow.
I think we drive quite slow. Compared to rallying, we drive very slow.
Yeah. So, but you drive with purpose, but there's also a lot of precision in the driving, and I was impressed by that. I'm oftentimes surprised how often people will be driving internationally distracted. They'll be on their phone, or they'll be not paying attention.
Right, that you can't do in the bush.
You cannot do that. You
not
have
on those kind of roads or those surfaces.
Yeah, and plus the person that's in the passenger seat is relying on you to make good choices.
Correct. And he's got to watch out for you as well. You can't see everything.
That's right. So you have to be working as a team, and the driver has to take responsibility that this is my job for the next 2 hours, 3 hours, however long, until you swap out, and I'm going to pay attention. Sure. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm not going to be distracted. I'm not going to be tired, and making sure that. But I was really impressed by that with Franz and you and Alex, just really experienced drivers, and you guys drove.
And another very big thing from a safety point of view: don't drive at night.
Yeah.
Not in the wild.
Yeah.
Really,
there's so many things that can come up.
There's so many things, animals, and that dusk and dawn are dangerous times as well, because animals are crossing.
Sure.
Moving. So those are the times you have to be careful when you go out.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you had any unusual encounters with animals in Africa?
I had on the one Gwagon, I had a kudu that jumped in front of us at dusk. We hit that, and the horn went. The kudu came through the windscreen, but the horn went in the roof above my head through.
I remember. So that same Gwagon, this was in 2010. You let me borrow that car.
That's a 230.
It was a 230, and I was going to take it up through Lesotho, and you were walking me around the vehicle. It was a very simple vehicle, and you said, "Oh, that hole in the roof is from a kudu horn."
Yeah.
And of course, the vehicle was flawless even through Lesotho. I mean, it wasn't a new vehicle at that time.
We drove that from the accident happened just outside Wankie Game Reserve, up in Zimbabwe. And we drove all the way home without a windscreen.
And now you bring a windscreen with you, I noticed.
We normally make the beauty of a Land Rover has a flat windscreen. Mm-hmm. So we had a piece of polycarbonate cut out exactly the same dimensions that we can actually fit.
And if I remember, another story that you've told me is something broke out a side window on the vehicle.
Oh yeah, that was in Botswana last year. And what happened is a truck passed us and hit the side window and knocked the window completely out. Or we had the windscreen up top, so we cut the windscreen out.
Yeah, you made it work.
The same size, and we made it work.
That's one thing that has always been so impressive about South Africans is you make a plan.
We make a plan. Get it going.
And it just has to be, if you think about hundreds of years ago when your ancestors first sailed to South Africa, think about how hardy those people would have been. How committed, how durable. I mean, just the fact that they survived means that their offspring is going to be pretty interesting people.
Well, I mean, even if you see the poor refugees that are coming out of Africa trying to cross into Europe, what they endure,
unbelievable.
What they do, I mean, it's terrifying.
Yeah,
those are the most skilled individuals you'll ever meet. Okay?
That's right. True survivors. Yes.
True survivors.
And it was the same with your ancestors too. I mean, to get on a wooden boat and to sail down the coast of Africa.
That's another story.
Unbelievable. And so I find that South Africans are a very, very hardy bunch. And
what they say is a boer maak 'n plan. That means a farmer makes a plan. There's nobody around.
Yeah, they've got to figure it out. And I've seen that. And I experienced that in my travels with you in Uganda and Kenya. Anytime we had a problem, you guys just took out the tools and you started working on the car.
That's it. What else can you do?
That's right.
Put it together again.
Yeah, it was an inspiration to me for sure. Let's talk a little bit about traveling with your family, because I think that that's something that we're seeing more and more families traveling together. You and your wife have traveled extensively around the world. What have you found helps
the two of you, Gilly and you, travel well together?
I think we tolerate each other. We've been together for 50 odd years,
Yeah, sure.
well, almost 60 years now.
Yeah, sure.
And I think, we tolerate each other, and we're a good fit, okay? And the kids are the same, we've got quite a close-knit family. Tina is now in the States for many years, Renee's here, and I think, between the kids and us, it's just a way of life.
Yeah.
A very enjoyable life, and we're very blessed.
Yeah. And what have you found helps when you travel with your kids? When you were...
But make them part of it.
Yeah.
Make them dig the car out, all those kind of things.
And you taught them all how to drive. I mean, I remember being so impressed by the driving skill of Renee and Tina both when
Right.
I've traveled with them
Right.
off-road. I mean, they're proper drivers.
Right. No, they can drive.
Yeah.
They can drive. Still got a little bit to learn, but they can drive.
We all do.
They
I
haven't
do.
done enough mileage. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way.
Yeah, we all got to get enough mileage under our belt. Yeah. And you are able to work with Renee every day. What are some things that you've learned in being able to work with your daughter?
Oh, it's a close family tie. Now we work every day together, and we control Frontrunner at this moment in time together with Keith. Yeah, and now with our new shareholders, Dometic, we'll push forward. And now in the corporate world, okay, once again,
Yeah.
I'm back with the thousands of people.
Yeah.
Okay, as employees, and
Life comes full circle.
Life comes full circle. So we're back
Yeah.
at square one again, and we'll see how we handle it. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I think Dometic will be a good fit for Frontrunner
Yeah.
going forward. I think we can build something really great together.
Yeah. And it must be a blessing to be able to work with your daughter every day.
That's very nice. No,
Yeah.
it's great stuff.
Yeah.
We're very close, all of us.
Yeah. No, I've seen it. It's always been something that I'm so impressed by is how close you guys are as a family,
Yeah.
too. Well, Stanley, it's been such a joy to have you on the,
Thank you,
on the
Scott.
podcast. I consider you a great friend. I'm so grateful for the travels we've been able to do together.
Right.
And I look we might even be able to do a trip here in the next month or so.
Well,
up
hopefully
north.
you get your new vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and
The
we
Grenadier is still in the...
The Grenadier, we have
that's
to
right.
see what that thing can do.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, it'll be interesting, and maybe we can meet on the way. We're going on the beginning of August. We're
Yeah.
going up north, and let's see. Maybe
At the
we can
rate
get it
we're at the
together.
rate we're going, I think it might line up just perfect.
We'll find you. If
that's
anything
right.
else, we'll find you.
That's
Is
great.
that hopefully not part of the
No,
side of the
let's
road.
hope not. Let's hope not. We're going to keep that bonnet closed on the
Yeah,
Grenadiers.
I hope so. Yeah.
All right. Very good, Stanley. Thank you again for your time, my
Oh,
friend.
thank you for your time, Scott.
All right. And we thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.